Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Live Week 7 in the National Football League. Andy McNamara alongside Shoaib. Thank you for joining us, whether you're watching on Sportsnet, YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch, whatever. Get your comments in below comment section. You can tweet us as well at AndyMC81 at SNSLE as we take you through fantasy football starts and sits, injury updates, as we have many key players here, Show, that are going to come right up to kickoff. That includes Aaron Jones. Okay, that includes Robert Tonyan. That includes a whole bunch of guys as well. And we'll take your questions all throughout, give you some prop plays and our best bets as well as we take you through for the next hour. How you doing?
Good, man. I think, it's an interesting week because of all the injuries. Certainly Aaron Jones being the biggest one because, if he's not in, I'm sure there'll be a lot of Jamal Williams questions. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we got an A.J. Dillon question for deeper leagues. I wonder if we'll see one of those today. And there was some COVID news, although I feel like there's probably going to be COVID news every week for the rest of the season at this point. But I think the Bills were affected by it. The Raiders were affected by it. But as far as we can tell, according to some of these insiders like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, it looks like it's going to be all systems go, all games going ahead today.
Yes, which is great news. And now for the Raiders, this could have been catastrophic. You had potentially the entire offensive line for the Raiders unable to play. They were fine last night, got cleared this morning. That is a go, so that's good. And for the Bills, Tyler Kroft is the only healthy or available, I should say, tight end. Everybody else was caught up with Dawson Knox in meetings and the COVID-19. He was actually off with his wife for the birth of their child. So he escaped. So Tyler Kroft is going to play against the Jets.
Yeah, I think first of all, great reason to be not present at a meeting. Nice. So mazel tov to Tyler Kroft and his wife for sure. I feel like that's going to be a common thread when it comes to COVID going forward. Like if one guy in a position group, is tests positive, catches it, whatever, that I feel like the immediate look will be to the rest of that position groups, because obviously when you're prepping in the week, the guys you are hanging out with as a player are the other players of your position, right? So it's interesting to monitor going forward because, I think for the most part, we've escaped a lot of major COVID things. But, look at Tennessee from a couple of weeks ago, right? A couple of wide receivers are placed on the COVID reserve list, and now they're coming off of it, certainly. But it's just something to continually monitor, I feel like.
It is, and especially when we're looking at potentially really juicy matchups like the Bills versus Jets. Like for me on our fantasy show, The Fantasy Show, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Sportsnet Radio Network every Sunday, we go through our danger zone picks, right, where we get bold.
Right.
I cannot get enough of Cole Beasley this week, Show. I can't get enough. John Brown is out. You're missing all the tight ends. The running backs, it's going to be a split. I think this is a get-right game for Josh Allen and Cole Beasley. That chemistry has been building and building. He's got double-digit fantasy points every week since week 1. He's got touchdowns. So I think Cole Beasley is going to have a monster game. I would light him up, whether it's in DraftKings. I would pop him as high as maybe a WR3, even above a flex spot if you're in a PPR league.
All right, sure. I can buy that. I'm on board with that. Man, Andy, can you imagine? I don't think this will happen. I really do agree that the Bills are going to win this thing. They're going to win by a lot. It's going to be a get-right game, like you mentioned, a great way to put it. But can you just imagine, like an alternate reality where the Bills drop 3 in a row and they lose to the Jets of all teams? Oh, my goodness. Like no Jamison Crowder for the Jets. Sam Darnold looking likely to play today for New York. But,
how many...
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like there are no fantasy relevant options on this entire team. It feels like, especially with Jamison Crowder out.
With Crowder out, then you're just guessing. Is it Jeff Smith? Who got 11 targets a week ago?
Yeah,
for 3 catches. Okay, Braxton Berrios has popped before. We love our Berrios here, but they might be a little dry this morning. Show we might not have any milk on our Berrios. Okay, we're gonna put it back in the cupboard.
Put it back in the cupboard. Yeah, keep it in the pantry.
Keep it in the pantry. We're not opening the box. Just seems like a complete disaster again for the Jets. Let's get to some of your questions here. Let me make sure we don't miss one here, and you keep those coming in whatever avenue you're watching the show in the comment section. Patrick on Facebook, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex, half PPR. Chark, CD, Montgomery, Justin Jackson, or Drake. So you need 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. Now Jackson is injured. He's going to play, but that's smelling more like a bit of a timeshare. So I'm going to say no Jackson. Montgomery. Yeah, well, that's your only other option if you need if you need a running back. I'm going to say Chark. You know what? I'll say Chark and CD, even though with Andy Dalton and the infighting in Dallas, like showed the players
Yeah.
calling out the coaches publicly saying they don't know what they're doing. They're not practicing. That's a disaster. But I think just the upside for CD Lamb, even if it's garbage time, is too much to pass up.
So I definitely agree on Chark because he had a bit of a down game last week, but it was his first game after coming back after injury, still being worked back into the mix. No setbacks this week, no new designations for DJ this week. So DJ Chark looks like a pretty safe option, and we know he has chemistry with Gardner Minshew. So I expect DJ Chark and Minshew actually to both kind of help each other out this week against the Chargers, and that is a relatively tough defense. The Jags probably aren't going to win that game, but at the same time, yeah, Chark has been a great option. So definitely fire him up there for your wide receiver spot, Patrick. But yeah, for that flex spot, I mean, if you're picking between, I'm just looking at the list here, CD, Montgomery, Justin Jackson, and Kenyon Drake. Oh man, I feel like I'll probably go Drake here, if only because I know the last week might have been somewhat of an anomaly. They were playing the just abysmal Cowboys defense. The Cards were. I think it was something like he ended up with 20 carries, 164 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And even if you take away the long last run he had to kind of ice the game,
right?
I mean, the game was long since over at that point, but they were just running the clock out, and he busted one for a huge touchdown. I think it was something like a 69-yard touchdown run at the very end of the game. So even if you take that out, he still had close to 100 yards and a touchdown. So clearly Cliff Kingsbury is working him back into the game plan after he said he would a couple weeks ago. So I know the Seahawks are a little more stiffer against the run than they are against the pass, certainly, but it just seems like for Kyler Murray, his job would be made easier if they do work in Kenyon Drake. And it looks like Kenyon Drake does get most of the goal line work unless Kyler Murray himself scampers around for a bootleg or something like that. But yeah, I think it is close, though, because it is half PPR. I'm going to say Chark for sure. I'm going to agree with you. Drake as the flex. But I mean, yeah, CD, it's just... We said this before, but it's just with all the turmoil in Dallas, I just like to wait one more week to see how the pecking order for the wide receivers shakes out.
Yeah, just to see. And I still think Andy Dalton can be fantasy relevant.
Sure, yeah.
But we're going to have to see it first now.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody expected a drop off that badly. Remember, folks, too, Joe Mixon is out with a foot injury. That's been official, so he's gone. Gio Bernard in at running back. Let me see. Let me make sure. Again, we're not missing anybody here. Josh on YouTube. Morning, guys. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Josh.
I'm in a bit of a pickle today. Should I go with Aaron Rodgers or Justin Herbert? Let me adjust my screen so I can get all the questions here. And should I start with Tunyon? By the way, official pronunciation correction by the Green Bay Packers. It is Robert Tunyon. And show what do they compare to so people can remember?
Funny, and why is that the word they're comparing his last name? Why not onion, Andy?
Fun. Onion Tunyon. That's got to be a shirt. You're welcome.
Oh, man.
You know what? You can have the Chiefs head hats and a bag of Funyuns. And there you go. And you've got your afternoon if you're a Packers fan. All right. Rodgers or Justin Herbert today. And should I start Tunyon or Fant? Now, Tunyon's another one. You're going to have to watch it. He's been working that ankle all day. And in Denver, weather is an issue against Kansas City. It's what do you say? -8 Celsius show, and it's snow, wind. Weather can change on a dime. Now, all things being equal, I would go with Tunyon, but with Fant, like you're kind of caught in a bit of a mix there. Track Tunyon. If he's cleared to play, I think you go that route just because of the weather. That one seems like it could turn into a bit of a ground and pound in Denver.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the weather, I think I had seen some beat reporters out of Denver as well earlier in the week before it started to snow and be really windy. It was pouring rain. Like it was raining so heavily you could see the water just leaking off the top decks into the lower fields and so on. So it's just not a great weather situation. And as we know, that definitely sometimes seems to suppress fantasy output. But yeah, Noah Fant also kind of was dealing with some injuries as well, right? So I think it's kind of you're choosing between what is the saying? 6 of one and half dozen of the other. So I feel like either way, though, but they're both great options. But I think I'm probably going to go Tunyon if he is active. Obviously, if he's not active, then you kind of are stuck with Fant, of course, Josh. But yeah, if he is active, I'm going to go with Tunyon. And what were the other guys? Rodgers or Justin Herbert?
Yeah.
And that's not bad situations to have. Justin Herbert, certainly one of the better rookies available to you at the quarterback position. He kind of went into the bye week on fire. I mean, even though they didn't win that game, the Saints were not able to stop him. He was great against the Saints. So I do like Justin Herbert, but I also really like Aaron Rodgers in a bounce back game. They're playing the Texans on the road. I know the Chargers are at home, so that might sway you in terms of taking Herbert over Rodgers, but I'm going Rodgers just because this is a Texans defense that just gave up 40 or something points to the Titans last weekend. I know Deshaun Watson and the rest of those, Ryan Tannehill and the rest of those guys are dangerous on their own right. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers is as well. So even with some injuries to potentially Tunyon and Aaron Jones, I still like Rodgers this week.
Well, Rodgers is going to be ticked off too, right?
That's
He was embarrassed.
Yeah,
lowest with Aaron Rodgers, he steps up.
Yeah, lowest fantasy output, I think, in a game he played from beginning to end. So, because of course you can factor in the injuries and so on. Yeah. So without injury, it was the lowest fantasy output game of his entire career, Andy. In a game he played all the snaps. So it can't get worse than that.
No, right? You know what though? I'm going to say, and again, I think you're going to be fine either way.
Yes,
I'm going to go Justin Herbert, man. Because think of it this way. So young quarterback, you do have the roller coaster, of course, to worry about with rookie quarterbacks.
Right.
Went in 20-plus fantasy points 2 weeks ago, 24-plus a week ago. Had the bye. Now you have a full week to prepare for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So let's face it, they're not scaring anybody. Justin Herbert, I think, is going to really showcase himself again today. So I'll say Herbert, but I think you're in a pretty good spot there.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's see. Willie with 4 Ys on YouTube. Willie, who do you think will win the NFC East? I think those forfeit. It'll just be it. They should just have an all-star team. Who's the best players and just have the NFC East is in the playoffs. 6-10 could win that division.
Yeah.
That's awful. I think it's going to be the Eagles just because they have the best quarterback. And if they can get any sort of health, which is a big if. Oh, big surprise, Deshaun Jackson's gone again. Big surprise. Who relies on Deshaun Jackson? Again, what do I do with D-Jax out? Why is he on your team?
Yeah, drop D-Jax,
forever. Please. No. And Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon's coming back, Andy. Yeah, so what? It doesn't matter. Terrible. But because you got the best quarterback, I think the Eagles are probably going to win it just based on everywhere else is pretty bad. But you know what, Show? Washington with Kyle Allen. How fun would that be?
That would be fun. I gotta say. I mean, if they came second in the division, if the division ended up being Philly, Washington, Dallas, New York in that order, I feel like you wouldn't be too surprised. But yeah, the NFC East, the NFC least, I guess, this year, right? Because they have been just abysmal. I kind of agree with you. The Eagles look like they have the most fight in them at the very least. Carson, and I mean that's with them missing 3 wide receivers, multiple offensive linemen. They missed Miles Sanders, like you mentioned, Zach Ertz. They were without Dallas Goedert. I mean, and not to mention all the pieces on defense as well. So yeah, it has been a rough time for Eagles and Eagles fans. But they picked up the win on Thursday night. I think they're now 2-4-1. I think they is their record on the year. If they finish the year at 6-9-1 and they won the division and they kind of hosted a home game in Philly as the 4 seed, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. I mean, honestly,
I honestly would not either. Giants can't do anything, so boy, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a bad situation.
Brandon on YouTube, Mike Evans or DK Metcalf? Give me DK Metcalf all day in that one. And that's we had a tweet earlier, Show, where someone asked me Mike Evans or James Robinson.
Who'd have thought?
How absurd! Imagine if beginning of the year, if you're first of all, who's James Robinson? Second of all, of course, Mike Evans. No, PPR, full PPR. I would go with Robinson this year. Mike Evans still isn't right. He doesn't have an injury designation. That dude's not right. He's catching touchdowns, which is good.
Yep.
But you have him, Antonio Brown, sort of lurking there. That contract is going to be finalized Monday. So you know what? I'm going to say you go DK Metcalf because he is the dominant dog in Seattle right now. I'm so happy Antonio Brown is not going to Seattle because that would have killed the value of him and Lockett.
And that was the other real destination for him. Yeah. It was Tampa or Seattle. It really felt like towards the end there. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I have Mike Evans in a number of leagues, Braden as well, and it's just I get the question because it's been such a roller coaster. But honestly, until further notice, you pretty much, and look, Seattle just had their bye. So until essentially you can't anymore, I feel like you're going to have to put DK Metcalf in maybe as an every week starter. Because sure, I think is there a chance, Andy, that Tyler Lockett on any given week, maybe he outperforms slightly DK Metcalf? Sure, there's that chance exists, but I feel like it's more likely than not that DK Metcalf is the guy. And actually, one of my, I know we talk about the best bets and the prop bets and so on towards the end of the show, but I'll sneak this one in right now. DK Metcalf over receiving yards, 68.5 receiving yards. I mean, he has not gone under that total all season, right? And I mean, in betting, that total has slowly been kind of creeping up, right? I think at one point it was, 61.5. I think a couple of weeks ago it was 63.5. Now it's 68.5. But I mean, they're playing the Cardinals defense in primetime, which is going to be a great matchup for him as well. So yeah, I think you fire up DK Metcalf, I feel like, in virtually all formats, basically.
Especially with an Arizona offense that's high scoring, it's fast.
Yeah.
You got Russell Wilson, 19 touchdowns for Russell Wilson.
Oof.
Come on, stop.
Don't stop.
Don't stop. Chris Carson's back. Like, that's just a great team. All right, let's keep her going here. Thomas on Facebook, Stafford or Tannehill? You guys know I love me my Tannehill. I love him.
You do.
But you're up against a Pittsburgh Steelers team, collectively leads the league in sacks. TJ Watt, I saw him last week, and Bud Dupree, real close against my Browns. Those guys are the real deal, man. They're nasty. Cam Hayward, nasty. Now, two undefeated teams. Tannehill certainly can get off. Jonnu Smith, by the way, folks. Jonnu Smith is healthy. Jonnu Smith will play.
All right.
So keep in my waiver wire article on Sportsnet.ca on Tuesday, I said maybe if you're a Jonnu owner, take a look. Anthony Ferkser, who if he didn't play would pop, but you don't have to worry about him anymore. I think when we look at that, you got to go Matt Stafford versus the Falcons. Matty Ice and the Falcons offense decided to turn up again after they fired everybody.
Yeah.
So you might force yourself a shootout there. I think you go Stafford.
I think I agree with you with Stafford as well. I mean, he has had more of a down year this year than he had at this point in 2019. But at the same time, yeah, they're facing just an abysmal Falcons defense. Not a lot has changed with the Falcons defense. The offense, like you mentioned, has definitely decided to show up now. But yeah, defense, not a lot has changed. Still going to be really bad. Stafford's going to have a lot of opportunities to throw. And again, it's not a knock on Tannehill. It's not a knock on him because he's been great this year. He has essentially picked up right where he left off from last year's great season. And I think I certainly expect them to continue to be competitive throughout the rest of the season. It's just with Tannehill, this might be, since he became the starter midway through last season, this actually might be his toughest matchup yet. Even without Devin Bush, who was, I think, done for the season with a torn ACL, right?
Yeah.
So, again, like you mentioned, Bud Dupree and TJ Watt there still present with the rest of that terrific Steelers defense. And yeah, I feel like Tannehill is still, let's say, a QB2 with the potential to be a QB1 this week, but I just feel like perhaps the floor is a little higher for Stafford against the bad Falcons defense versus Tannehill against a very good Steelers defense.
Right, and we have to remember, too, Kenny Galladay's back and healthy.
Right.
You know, so I was surprised at the dip versus Jacksonville last week for Stafford, just 13.32 fantasy points. But yeah, I think when we look at everything put together, and he's a good value on DraftKings too, $6,500.
It's not bad.
You know, cheaper than Tom Brady, who I would not be playing this week. I think for Brady versus Vegas, Derek Carr, sneaky play. I love Derek Carr this week. Derek Carr has one interception thrown, 11-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Like that's real.
That's not bad. Yeah, I mean, the only reason I'll disagree with you on Derek Carr is because of the Bucs defense. The Bucs defense is the real deal. I feel. I know we talk about the Bears defense and we talk about a number of other defensive units, but if the Bears defense, let's just say, if the Bears defense is number one and the Steelers defense is number two, then the Bucs at worst are number three, right? And I feel like they have done such a great job at limiting opposing offenses, and we saw what they did to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers just last week. I feel like it's just one of those things where for the Bucs, you know, you talk about Tom Brady, you talk about obviously the battle between Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, you talk about Mike Evans and Godwin, the incoming AB, you talk about Gronk and Cameron Brate. Like, you talk about all these great options on offense. I think that probably rightly overshadows the Buccaneers defense, but they are a unit that is for real. It's the only reason I'm fading a little bit on Derek Carr this week, but I think like in the right situation, you absolutely for sure can start him.
Yeah. Let's see here. There was a Will on YouTube, Juju or Diggs. You got to sit Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah. You could almost drop Juju Smith-Schuster show. He's not being used. Multiple single-digit fantasy outputs. You have Chase Claypool popping up. Deontay Johnson returns from the back injury. You got James Conner back there. James Washington is more valuable than Juju. Whereas you have Diggs, who's been a stud, mid to high teens, averaging fantasy points week in, week out, who's playing the Jets. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. Juju, yeah, it's so tough, right? I mean, he was a weekly WR1 in 2018. Obviously,
Yeah.
last year he was not great because Big Ben was out. Even with Big Ben back, it's not that I don't think that Roethlisberger doesn't trust Juju. I don't really think that's the problem because Juju is leading the team, I think, in targets and receptions. But even in PPR, he just hasn't been making enough of an impact. He's catching
No.
like 3 passes for 40 yards, if that sometimes, right? And I think Deontay Johnson is coming back this week. It certainly seems like Chase
Yeah.
Claypool, of course, Canadian Chase Claypool has looked great. And I think
Star.
Chase Claypool, too. I like Claypool more than Juju this week, if only because WR2 status for Claypool, because I think the Titans have kind of struggled with those the wide receivers that have the same athletic profile as Chase Claypool, like big tall
fat.
guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's if you look at their stats against similar wide receivers throughout the season, they really have struggled with that. But yeah, Juju, yeah, he is like I don't know if this is too bold to say, Andy. So let me know if you think it is. But
Yeah.
I feel like Juju is borderline a fantasy bust for this season. Like based on where you dropped him, he might be one of the bigger busts, depending on, of course, who you drafted of the year.
You expected him to be a WR2 for your fantasy team. If you drafted Juju, you expected him as a nice, solid plug and play, set it, forget it, WR2. It's not the case. I think, yeah, we have to consider him at least first half of the season total bust.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a
not
lot
been
of weapons in Pittsburgh. Like you could spread it out, which is why I'm shocked he at least hasn't gotten like one big pop game, right? Like out of just almost randomness. But no, that's where it is. So definitely Diggs versus the Jets. Scott on Facebook. Good morning. Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
I have Claypool, Kupp, DJ Moore, and Will Fuller. Which two would you play? Got to go Will Fuller.
Yep.
No injury. The hamstring seems strong right now. Show no, knock on wood. Fine. We'll knock on the table here. Okay, Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. Both guys showing up. Like that Texans offense since old Billy O'Brien got booted. Look good. So I'll say Fuller and I'll go Claypool. I don't like that Rams-Bears matchup for Kupp. That Bears defense is ridiculous.
It is.
DJ Moore, while him and Anderson have both coexisted, again, the matchup, DJ Moore, I think you can play for sure, but Claypool's been so hot. I think you just got to keep going until he proves he's not worthy of it. Like, why not?
And that's the thing, right? I don't think it's necessarily chasing the points with Claypool. Chasing the points with Chase Claypool. I only didn't realize that until I said it out loud. But chase the chase, yeah. But I think it really is just simply the fact that they have made him a key part of that game plan. Like he is being used. Now, certainly there is a chance that today with Deontay Johnson back, there is a chance that maybe that dips a little bit. And we just talked a lot about Juju Smith-Schuster. But yeah, of these options, for sure, Kupp is last for me because of the Bears defense just downgrades everyone, right? I mean, if Kupp and Woods also have been great, I think, for Los Angeles this year, and I think for the most part you can fire them up in WR2 matchups, right? But especially if you're in PPR. But this week it feels like everybody on that Los Angeles Rams offense gets downgraded, especially Woods and Kupp. So they go down, and as a result, yeah, DJ Moore's fine. But yeah, I think for Scott here on Facebook, I like Will Fuller and Chase Claypool as well.
Some notes as well coming out from Adam Schefter that Michael Thomas for the Saints, not just in jeopardy of, well, he will miss this week. He's in jeopardy of missing next week as well, Shoaib.
What?
Like that just seems like a disaster where infighting, discipline, rumors of being traded. Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders both out this week. I think if you are an owner of one or both, you see if Traquan Smith is on the waiver wire, and I put Jared Cook in PPR ahead of him. Just because outside of Kamara, who's going to get his regular feeding anyway, probably more, Jared Cook's been a nice, reliable, safe passing option for Drew Brees, whose arm, let's face it, isn't great.
It's not what it was, not what it used to be for sure. I feel like we answer that question basically every week. Like you always think to yourself, maybe this is the week that Drew Brees becomes a QB1 again, and then it's not, right? And again, it's certainly a part of that is because he's been without Michael Thomas virtually all season so far, and not looking good for MT. I mean, he set the catch record. I think it was just last week. Last year or something like that, or the yardage record or the most catches in a season record or something like that. And either way, he was close. And now here he is, Michael Thomas. Just we talk about bust with Juju. He might be another bust as well. I know injury is a different cause for concern, but I mean, man, I drafted MT for the very first time, Andy, in a league this year, thinking to myself, oh yeah, PPR league,
got him.
great. It's going to be great. A bona fide number one receiver. Don't set it in and forget it. And it has been an abject disaster. So I think I'm staying away in the future.
That sucks, right? It just burns you. Exactly. Thunder on Facebook. Great handle. Thunder on Facebook. DeAndre Swift or Edwards-Helaire? Very interesting question.
That's a tough one.
Now, DeAndre Swift, it's been Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, he's back, reported that DeAndre Swift, his workload is expected to increase even further. Last couple weeks, he has really been going there for Detroit. While you still have Adrian Peterson able to be serviceable, still getting low double-digit fantasy points, but it looks like finally they are starting to shift into DeAndre Swift mode. Now, we couple that with Edwards-Helaire. Le'Veon Bell is in. Multiple reports saying Le'Veon Bell has impressed. He's picked up the playbook. He's healthy. He's wowing teammates and coaches. And that as soon as today, we could see an even split between Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who balled out, who sent a message. We were talking about it, right? It was like, is this going to be a message day? He sent a message. And Bell in a bad weather condition. So I wonder, maybe if there's enough room for both Bell and CEH, who I still would think, just getting used to the offense, would still have to get the most snapshot for now.
For now, yeah. That's a tough one. I really do agree with you in that I think there is room for both these guys, both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Bell, to coexist. I think that, again, you know me, I'm more conservative in that I want to see it happen before I say, yeah, sure, go ahead and do this, this, and this. Because like you said, like you always say, I should say, when we give our picks, it's kind of like, this is what we would do if we were in your shoes, right? And I feel like I might, it's crazy to say, but the Broncos' rush defense is pretty good. It is pretty good. It's better than a lot of the teams rushing defense-wise that they have faced this season. I think they just activated one of their another corner off of IR as well. Not that necessarily is going to contribute to the rush defense, but I wonder if that takes the pressure off of the secondary and they can devote more time to the front seven. And if that's the case, you mentioned as well Swift maybe getting an expanded role. He saw 29, I think it was, touches last weekend to AP's 27. AP had an MRI. Allegedly, there were no issues with the MRI on Thursday. But like you said, Bo Scarborough also being reactivated for the Lions as well. It kind of creates an even worse, if you thought that was possible, fantasy quagmire for the Detroit Lions running back situation. But Swift kind of looks like he has the inside track, the edge to be the guy in Detroit. And I mean, again, we don't know how they're going to use him because who knows what Matt Patricia decides to do on a game-by-game basis. But it's so tough. But I feel like I might give the slightest of edges to Detroit, if only because I could see a situation for Kansas City today where Kelsey, for example, gets a couple catches, a couple long runs. Patrick Mahomes likes to run the ball sometimes himself, right? Versus a bad Falcons defense for the Lions. There might be more opportunities to exploit there versus a tougher Broncos defense.
And you don't have the weather conditions to worry about.
Exactly, yeah, that's
that one. Yeah. You're playing in Denver. The winds, it can change on a dime, like at any moment. So that would lead me to think, okay, it would go more towards the run, but depends how slippery it is. You know what? That maybe it's flashbacks, and I'm having memories of the Bo Scarborough situation from a year ago where he popped up. I'm going to go CEH this week.
Right.
I am. I'm going to go CEH in Kansas City. But it's going to be interesting to see how both backs are used in Kansas City, and then that timeshare, if it continues like the report was, to go in favor of DeAndre Swift. Because if it does, which it should, because he's so talented, then we could be on to something special with the Lions. Let's see. We got Josh on YouTube. Claypool or Beasley as my flex.
I know where you're going.
Have PPR. Give me a little Cole Beasley show. I want Beasley. I want him a lot. I want him on DraftKings. I want him in my fantasy leagues. I want season long. All Beasley today versus the Jets. There's no John Brown. Tyler Kroft's the only left standing tight end. Bills don't really use the tight end anyway. Developing chemistry, like I said, with Josh Allen. Week in, week out. People can sleep on him. And I love me some Chase Claypool. But tougher defense. But like you said, Titans have had trouble with that big body type. I just feel the options in Buffalo when throwing the ball are much more reduced than Roethlisberger has in Pittsburgh. So I'll say Beasley.
Fair enough. All right, fair enough. I think I'll probably go Beasley as well, if only because there is the chance that this is a James Conner day in Pittsburgh. There's a chance that Deontay Johnson in his return siphons some targets from Claypool. I mean, I know what we talked down, we kind of poo-pooed on Juju Smith-Schuster, but I mean, there's a chance that he breaks out. Right? I mean, like there's just, like you said, there are just so many more options for the Steelers because they can do virtually whatever they want on offense versus Cole Beasley. I mean, the lowly Jets, unfortunately. I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're a big Jets fan, because I'm sure it has not been fun for you if you're a Jets fan this season. But yeah, I think just everything has gone wrong for New York. And I mean, outside of Stephon Diggs, who I also expect to have a decent game as well. Sure. Josh Allen, you said it before, get right game for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And you got to figure that Cole Beasley as their number 2 wide receiver without John Brown is going to be a heavy dose of Beasley, a large factor in this probable lopsided win for the Buffalo Bills today.
Well, you can do a nice stack too. You can do a nice DraftKings stack with Allen and Beasley. Beasley's under $5,000 for your DraftKings salary.
Hey, did you ever play that all Dolphins DraftKings play from last week? Did you do that in the end? I forget.
You know what? I think I meant to. I think I forgot, to be honest. I think I meant to. We talked during the show, but everything's all swirl, and then it's kickoff. It's like, yeah. I didn't get it. I think that probably would have worked out well. But yeah, quick side note. Speaking of the Dolphins, how did you not just feel like sad? Ryan Fitzpatrick coming out saying like it's almost the worst thing of like he wasn't mad, he was disappointed.
Right.
I'm like, oh man, but like he's been pulled so often. It's Tua time. Dolphins are playing well. It's an interesting move for him to get ready. There's going to be all eyes on Tua next week, and I'm sure that's going to be a question that's popping up a lot for Week 8, whether you start Tua.
Oof. Yeah, I know that's gonna be tough to forecast against. Who are they playing? The Rams, I think.
Rams.
Yeah,
why are you starting him against that defense?
Aaron Donald and the rest of those guys, Jalen Ramsey, etc. against Tua. I mean, look, I think it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to watch next week. But that's a tough starting matchup for Tua.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, let's see. David on YouTube. Darren Waller or Jonnu Smith at tight end. Now, 2 tough defenses, right? Because you got Jonnu, who was banged up during the week, like we said. He is right. No injury designation, playing that Steelers defense that I went over. Then Waller versus Tampa Bay, that you said show as well. Sneaky good. They are tough. They've given up the 4th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. I think when you look at, again, we look at the options, where if you're Tennessee, you're obviously going to try to rerun the ball with Derrick Henry. Raiders have Josh Jacobs, of course. The offensive line is back. I'm going to lean Waller just because he was the healthier one going into the week. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there might be a little bit of hesitation, maybe not to give Jonnu a full workload. And if Tannehill's rushed, Jonnu does provide a quick outlet pass as well. So I think both could be okay, but I'll say Waller just because he's healthier.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'll be quick because I think I just kind of scrolled down to see the rest of the questions, and we have a lot of questions here. So I'll be quick here as well. But yeah, David on YouTube asking Waller or Smith. Yeah, I think it's hard to sit the TE4 on the year, and that is what Waller is right now. And again, how many times we talk about it, the TE position is so scarce. But yeah, I'm going to go even with Jonnu Smith being healthier. I feel like 2 tough defenses for both these guys, but I like Waller because Derek Carr, despite the fact that they're going up against the Buccaneers, Derek Carr is going to throw the ball early and often to Darren Waller.
Yeah, and this is a nice question next. Alex on YouTube. Phillip Lindsay or Chase Edmonds in half PPR? It's ugly, but Mixon and Sanders were out for me this week.
Yeah.
That is bad luck, Alex. I get you, man. I get you. Yeah, I'm going to say Edmonds because although Kenyon Drake, like you said it, and you got to not just look at the fantasy points total, folks. You got to look at sometimes how they get there. And for Drake's, a lot of those points, he still had a very good game, but a lot of those came from that end of the game and he just broke one loose. It's not like the same as if he grinded it out the whole game. Right. And Chase Edmonds, even with Drake having that pop last week, has been relied on. Especially it being a half PPR standard, maybe a different situation. But that, I'm going to say Edmonds there, just because with the Gordon, with the Lindsay, you could have both of them go off well with the bad weather in Denver, but I feel a little more comfortable with Edmonds right now.
Yeah, it's possible maybe in the coming weeks, if you have Philip Lindsay, Alex, maybe hold on to him because we haven't heard any news on the potential suspension stuff for
There's gotta
DUI
be.
for Melvin Gordon. Yeah, I agree. Like it's probably coming at
There's
some
gotta
point,
be.
but it's just taking a little while because we know sometimes the suspension stuff, as they talk with the commissioner's office or so on, they kind of are having negotiations for how
Right.
long to do it. Maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games based on the CBA. But for this week, yeah, I don't know. I think I probably would feel comfortable taking Chase Edmonds as well. It's a tough one. It is a tough one, Alex, for sure. But let's go Chase Edmonds against a more vulnerable Seahawks defense versus a Broncos team that is playing a Chiefs defense that can be had, but the weather makes it a bit of a more of a question mark.
It does. It does. We got Ezra on Facebook. Good morning. Morning, Ezra. Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, or Drew Brees. Now, folks, I know, okay, we hate or love, I guess, the Dallas Cowboys defense. I guess you love it if you're going against it, right?
Probably.
I'm not biting on Kyle Allen. He is just not built. That offense is just not built for quarterback fantasy production. It's just not. So I feel when I'm looking at this, Kyle Allen's probably still going to be in the teens and hand it off, short pass, whatever. Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Brees. Teddy took a step back the last time they were out. And with Drew Brees without Michael Thomas and Sanders, this could be more of an Alvin Kamara feast day. Now, it could be a little dink and dunk, and you get Brees' points that way.
Possible, yeah.
I'll say Teddy.
Yeah, I think of these three options, I'll probably go Bridgewater as well because I think also you got to keep in mind because I'll probably punt on Kyle Allen, so that makes it between Bridgewater and Brees as well. And for Brees, I mean, we kind of talked about it. It's just he has not been great this season, and every week I think he might be. But I actually think the Panthers' defense has been shockingly good, has been surprisingly stout. I know they're kind of in. I guess if they're in like the middle of the pack, I guess they're kind of towards the upper half of the middle, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Okay. Like if they're right in the middle, they're kind of just on the upper half of that divider, I guess. But yeah, the Panthers defense surprisingly stout enough that I would take Teddy Bridgewater. Plus, he has the rushing appeal that he's been making more use of in recent weeks as well. So yeah, I agree with you. He did take a step back, but I'll take him this week for Ezra on Facebook.
Show breaking news. Ooh, Aaron Jones inactive. Will not play for the Packers. He traveled to Houston. He was expected to possibly suit up. Mm-hmm. He is out.
So fire up some Jamal Williams.
I wonder how A.J. Dillon is going to be sprinkled in. Maybe a little A.J. Dillon flex play on your DraftKings, a little cheap pop in there for one of them. But Aaron Jones officially ruled inactive for the Packers. Huge fantasy news. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely huge. I got to say, I speculatively added Jamal Williams last night, and it paid out. It paid off. So I'm putting him in there. As soon as we're done talking at 12, I'm going to go and change my fantasy lineup. But yeah, if you are listening to this and you have one of those open waivers and you're just hearing this right now, run to your waivers to see if he is available because I'm sure that'll be a better option than some of the questions we have fielded so far.
Oh, absolutely. And you can hit us up on Twitter with any other fantasy football questions you have too, folks. At AndyMC81, at SNSLE, and of course in the comment sections below as we continue. Peter on Facebook, Gibson, Justin Jackson, or Bernard. Jackson, again, expected to play, not 100%. Could be a split between him and Kelly. Gibson or Bernard, so Joe Mixon out. That Bengals offensive line getting a little more comfortable. Bernard for PPR. Now, it doesn't say PPR. If it's PPR, Bernard has a place, okay? Mm-hmm. And Joe Burrow for the Bengals has thrown the most pass attempts in the whole NFL.
It's true.
That's how the offense is built. The last time they played the Browns, he threw it 61 times. So he could. But for me versus Dallas, I'm liking myself some Antonio Gibson. That's where
Yeah, it's hard not to pick anyone who plays the awful Dallas defense, right? Like it is tough. You know what? I think I will pick Gio Bernard in this situation, only because you and I like to often say volume is king, and he is he's pretty much the only guy in that backfield this week because no Joe Mixon. That's the only reason I'm going to take Gio Bernard. Also because I just feel like he's not going to have a lot of value outside this week. And if there's probably the floor is pretty low, but I feel like the ceiling could be pretty high as well. I feel like this might be one of those weeks you see Gio Bernard. And again, like you said, we don't know if this is PPR or not, but like you said, this could be a week where maybe both running backs on both teams, Kareem Hunt and Gio Bernard, have great days because both teams are decent against, or not so great against the run, I should say.
Right. And here's some more news from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network
News.
on injury news. Packers, Robert Tonyan in, officially active. So
There you go.
Aaron Jones out, Tonyan in. Jets have activated rookie wide receiver Denzel Mims, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That's not a bad speculative pickup. I wouldn't play him this week. But as far as a big body target, potentially, it's the Jets. So,
temper expectations.
Yeah. But still, that is interesting. Bengals, John Ross and Jamison Crowder both officially ruled out. We expected Crowder to be out. He's officially ruled out. John Ross stinks for the Bengals anyway, so who cares? Now let's see here. So we got NJ Devils fan 30, Jamal Williams or Ronald Jones, non-PPR. Hey, with the news that Aaron Jones is out, Jamal Williams, I think you got to go that way regardless of format right now.
Yeah, at this point, probably got to go Jamal Williams. We know Aaron Rodgers likes to throw it to him as well. So I know he said non-PPR, but there is some value to be had in the passing game for Jamal Williams as well. I mean, it's hard to go away from Ronald Jones, right? Because he has had, 3 straight games with over 100 yards. I think he has scored lots of touchdowns as well, rushing touchdowns. He was kind of the star of the win over, offensively at least, over the win over the Packers last weekend. And yeah, look, I think I'll go Jamal Williams if only because of the opportunity here, because Leonard Fournette, he was active. He didn't really do much last week, nor has he had the really opportunities to do it weeks before because he's been dealing with some injuries. But It's possible he does eat into the workload today. But I mean, look, if you decide, NJ Devils fan 30, to start Ronald Jones over Jamal Williams, I think you'll probably be okay. Because I think the Raiders' rush defense-wise are also, again, middle of the pack. Now, so you'll probably be okay. But yeah, Jamal Williams without Aaron Jones is a great play as well.
Yeah, it's a case where we just don't know how Fournette's going to be used a week back and supposedly totally healthy. So
yeah.
Joe on YouTube, Debo versus the Pats or Woods versus the Bears? Which one do I play? PPR. Ooh boy, two tough defenses. San Francisco show they are just not right. They're not right at all. I can't really trust any sort of passing volume right now from Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, some news there in the backfield. Of course, most are placed on the IR for San Francisco. Jeff Wilson activated. JaMychal Hasty, who was a hot little quiet midweek waiver wire pickup. I think that's going to sort of counterbalance those two. Jerick McKinnon, that's the guy who I love, who I think is going to have a huge bounce back week. Especially in PPR in that backfield. But out of those two, I'm going to say Woods. These are both really tough. The Bears are difficult. Woods has been more consistent than Kupp. So I will say Woods, but I think both are going to have a difficult week.
Yeah, I think so too. I think both these guys are probably WR3s this week for me. But if you're going based off of their track record this year, obviously Deebo Samuel has had injury problems. So he is back now and they're working him more into the game plan. But the Patriots secondary is pretty tough, right? I mean, I think most guys do struggle against the Patriots secondary. Yeah, they gave up a decent amount of points to Tim Patrick last week, but I think a lot of those plays were like really big chunk plays, right? Where like a guy was out of position and he catches the ball for like a 30-yard gain and so on. So yeah, I think I'll probably stick with you because Robert Woods has been quietly one of the more consistent and underrated, perhaps, fantasy wide receivers of the entire season, I think, so far. So again, yes, downgrade because of the Bears' defense, but I think there's more to trust with Robert Woods versus a very inconsistent 49ers offense that is led by Jimmy Garoppolo.
Exactly. Some more actives and inactives to report. This coming from Adam Schefter, just a couple others. We said Robert Tonyan. We told you that. Sam Darnold for the Jets. That shouldn't impact your day at all.
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel active. Again, shouldn't impact you. Inactives. One that's key for me, Jordan Akins, tight end for the Texans. That means if you're in tight end hell and you need some help, Darren Fells, he's going to need to catch you a touchdown, but consecutive weeks, he's scored double-digit fantasy points. Deshaun Watson likes him, and that offense is starting to heat up. Has a nice underneath. If Cooks and Fuller are being covered, Fells is a nice play there. Crowder, as we said, is out. John Ross is out. And if you're just joining us, Aaron Jones, inactive for the Packers.
Right.
So those are some inactives there. Alex on YouTube, which tight end would you take a flyer on this week out of the following? Eric Ebron, Logan Thomas, David Njoku. Now that's a good point bringing out with David Njoku. Austin Hooper for the Browns. Emergency appendectomy Friday.
Yikes.
Those are scary. So he's going to be out this week, maybe next week as well. Njoku, the Browns have really liked rookie Harrison Bryant over Njoku. And until Baker Mayfield gets a little more confidence back, I think they're going to try to really run the ball with Kareem Hunt and a combo of Ernest Johnson and Dontrell Hilliard behind him. So I'm going to say no Njoku. I think out of that one, show, Logan Thomas. Let's go back to the best matchup.
Yeah.
Eric Ebron, hasn't really done much this year and inconsistent versus Tennessee, or Logan Thomas versus the Cowboys. Can't stop anybody.
That's true. I think I've been in the Logan Thomas camp. I feel like all season I've been picking him as like a DraftKings play, as like an over-unders for receiving yards and so on. But I think this is the week, Andy. This is the week. He caught his first touchdown last weekend since week 1, and now who knows if he catches a touchdown against the Cowboys, but the odds are pretty high because the Cowboys defense is so porous. And Kyle Allen does like apparently throwing him the ball. So, yeah. I mean, I know we may not be buyers of Kyle Allen specifically, but I am a buyer of Logan Thomas. So for Alex, yeah, I think I'll take a flyer. It is tough, right? But I think I will take a flyer on Logan Thomas.
Philip on Facebook, Tunyon or Fells? So again, Tunyon ruled in. I would have to think without Aaron Jones, at least that opens up a little bit more of a window for target share for Tunyon. The ankle all week does concern me, but I feel Fells gives you the highest floor, lowest ceiling. Like he's going to get you, 12 to 14 fantasy points if he catches a touchdown.
Right.
I'm going to risk it with Tunyon. If the Packers say he's healthy enough, I'm going to risk it. I'll say Tunyon.
Because Akins is out, I think I'll take Fells. That's the only reason. If they were both in, I think I'd probably agree with you and say Tunyon. But I feel like we might see I feel like whenever the danger with the Packers is that whenever anyone is out, the danger is that whatever targets or carries or whatever was going to go to that person is just going to be somehow translated, transformed, converted into just like 5 to 10 more targets for Devontae Adams, essentially. Right. That's so if you saw a stat line like later today of Aaron Rodgers having thrown the ball at Devontae Adams like 25 times, would you be that surprised? I wouldn't be.
I would not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. No, that would surprise me. Koala Bear on YouTube. Hello, Koala Bear.
Got a Koala Bear.
Who do you start? Flex and bench. So start flex and bench between Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Tyler Boyd, or flex Antonio Gibson. Okay, hold on here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So essentially,
who are you benching? Here?
Okay, so who am I benching out of that? Ooh, I'm gonna bench Tyler Boyd. Because I don't like the AJ Green pop from last week.
Right.
I don't like the target share. He got 11. I want to see how that works out. You got T. Higgins there as well. Now again, Joe Burrow, he threw it 61 times versus the Browns. So everybody could eat. But out of that group, I'll say Boyd. I really like Christian Kirk. He was in one of my sleepers in my Sportsnet.ca Saturday article. Mm-hmm. You can check that out. With DeAndre Hopkins still a bit hobbled with the ankle, he's going to suit up. But Christian Kirk, I want to have in my lineup. So I'll say Boyd.
Yeah, Boyd, it's tough, right? Because I think all 4 of those guys probably are decent plays this week. But Tyler Boyd probably has the lowest ceiling against the Browns. I do really feel like this might end up being a more spread around game. He is Joe Burrow's kind of security blanket, so that kind of confers some value upon him just by itself, right? Like just kind of on its own. But I think if you don't want to bench Tyler Boyd, I think the only other guy I would consider benching is Mike Evans because he's been dealing with some injuries as well. The Buccaneers, maybe this becomes more of a Ronald Jones game. Maybe this becomes again Gronk popped last week. Brady always has the chance. Godwin as well, lower end WR1, whereas Evans maybe a higher end WR2. I think I probably will agree with you and say Boyd. But if Koala Bear, if KB wants to go away from that, then maybe Mike Evans as a close second for me.
Kai Pai on YouTube. Good morning, gents. Morning, Kai Pai. Jonnu or Woods standard. Oof, that's tricky.
That's tough.
You're popping in standard. I don't think if we're looking at it, the Pittsburgh defense is going to give up. They're just built not to give up that many yards. Woods, though, versus the Bears.
The Bears, though, that's the thing, right?
Right? I'll say Jonnu. Both are tough defenses. Jonnu Smith healthy. I'll go that way. I don't love either, but I'll say Jonnu.
Yeah, I don't love either as well, but I think even though he's in, like you said, Jonnu Smith, so I think I'll probably lean Jonnu Smith over Woods in standard. If it was a PPR league, maybe I'd lean Woods because he's going to get his targets regardless. It's just I feel like they're going to be a lot of like the depth of yardage, depth of target, perhaps a better way of saying it, might be a lot shorter for Woods than it otherwise would because that defense is just so lethal, right? They just neuter basically almost every option they face. I think it was something like I'm just looking at my notes here, Andy. I think it was something like so far this season, the Bears defense in any individual game has only allowed one touchdown through the air. So if they like on average, right? So like only one passing touchdown a game against the Bears defense. So, I mean, if you think it's going to be Robert Woods this week, it's entirely possible. It's also entirely possible it's Cooper Kupp. It's entirely possible it's one of Tyler Higbee or Gerald Everett. It's also possible he throws a touchdown, Jared Goff throws a touchdown to Darrell Henderson or something like that, right? So I feel like the Bears defense is so good, that makes me want to shy away from them and go Jonnu Smith.
Tight end question from Scott on Facebook. Greg Olsen or Hayden Hurst? Greg Olsen, who started the year actually kind of sneaky good. Sort of in the same Darren Fells conversation, giving you a higher floor. He's really faded. Will Dissly coming back, had a touchdown last week. That's cutting into Olsen's share. So I'll go Hayden Hurst. In a plus matchup, we expect big things out of Hayden Hurst. And, you know, with Julio healthy, that might be an issue. But with the shootout possibility against Detroit, I'll say Hurst.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. I think now that they've made some changes on offense, it certainly looks like the Falcons' offense has come back a little stronger. And I almost feel like Hayden Hurst has a little more room to operate now that Julio is back, too, right? I mean, Julio being back, I think, seemingly helps the rest of the offense. It does kind of hurt Russell Gage, I think. Russell Gage has been the one who has been hurt by Julio's return. But yeah, Julio, Calvin Ridley, and Hayden Hurst, I agree. I think I'll take Hayden Hurst over Greg Olsen for Scott this week.
Eric on YouTube, Matt Ryan with Julio playing or Joe Burrow in the Battle of Cleveland? Technically Battle of Ohio, Eric.
I get we get what he means.
It's all good, baby. It's all good. I get it. Now, okay, so Burrow, as we talked about, most pass attempts. But guess what, Show? 2 games in a row, hasn't thrown a passing touchdown. Ran in one last week. That's a little concerning. Matt Ryan and Julio together, they just erupted a week ago. Was that a statement game with everybody being fired? Does it continue? That Detroit defense lends me to think we could see it again. I'll say Matt Ryan. Got to go Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I think Joe Burrow has been a revelation so far in his rookie season. I think has been one of the better QBs. I think he's a top 10 quarterback right now and on the year. I think as well, after seeing a bit of a resurgence from Matt Ryan after arguably his worst game of the season before that, I think I'll probably take Matty Ice, especially with Julio healthy. We just talked about Hayden Hurst, Julio being healthy. I think always kind of moves the needle towards Matt Ryan as well.
All right, question from Rue on Twitch. James Robinson, DeAndre Swift, or Mike Davis in the flex? Ooh, that's good. Let me see. Okay, like we said, love DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
With those kind of the share question marks, it was said he should be increasing his role more. That's great. Who is getting the most touches here? Starter share for sure. We know it's James Robinson. We know it's Mike Davis. I think Mike Davis bounced back. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Panthers running back. I'll go Davis.
Oh, okay, all right. Over Robinson and Swift,
I will.
That's a tough one. I feel like because these 3 guys are relatively close for me in like rankings. Like if you were to group them together in some kind of tier, I feel like they'd all probably be in the same tier at this point. Maybe James Robinson slightly ahead based on a week-to-week matchup because of how the Jags use him. But yeah, I think I'll probably go. Man, I'll probably go DeAndre Swift here. I'll go Swift here, if only because, like we talked about before, I think he has started to out-touch the rest of that backfield. I know Bo Scarborough, again, coming back in, it makes you worry a little bit, and I totally understand that. But, I'll go DeAndre Swift based on what we saw last week. Again, 29 touches to AP's 27, and against a very bad Falcons defense for the Lions, whereas the Saints defense, not great, I admit, not great. But I still think that, like Mike Davis, again, it's hard, right? Because this might be the last week you use him, depending on when Christian McCaffrey comes back. He might come back next week. He might come back the week after. Who knows? But, Mike Davis. Close second for me is Mike Davis. But, yeah, I like DeAndre Swift this week.
Hey, it's Jabber on YouTube. Jamal Williams or Todd Gurley? Well, with the news that Aaron Jones officially out for the Packers, I'm going to go Jamal Williams. I really like what Todd Gurley's done this year. But I just feel Jamal Williams is in a spot where, hey, it's going to be between him and A.J. Dillon. So I'll say Williams.
Yeah, it's hard again not to go away from Jamal Williams because of the news that Aaron Jones is out. It's close for me. It's close because I think Todd Gurley has been a very pleasant surprise. I wonder if what Hay Jabber's other guys are on the for running backs, because if you can, I would start both this week. But if you had to split hairs between these two, I want to say Todd Gurley, but I think because again, it seems that AJ Dillon is not going to be too much of a huge factor as far as we can tell. So I think for now, I'll go Williams as well.
All right. Harlan on YouTube. Jacobs, J. Williams, G. Bernard, D. Swift, J. Robinson, and Singletary need 3. What to do? Thank you in advance. TIA. I think that's
I was wondering what that meant.
Does that mean? I just kind of came up with that.
I think you're right. No, I think that is what that means.
Or he's saying hi to somebody named Tia. I don't know. But Harlan, we're going to help you out anyway. So need 3. All right, so how many do we got total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Yeah. No Singletary. I'm counting him out.
Agreed.
I'll go Jacobs, Williams, Robinson. Jacobs, Williams, Robinson.
I'll go Williams and Robinson as well. And I'm going to bench Jacobs this week only because they're going against the tough Bucs defense. And I'll go D Swift. I'll go Williams, Robinson, D Swift.
Okay. Let's get to a couple of our best bets.
Sure, yeah.
Player props before we wrap things up here. And folks, if we didn't get to your questions or if you have any other ones, you can get us on Twitter at AndyMC81, at SNS Ali. This is a spot I really like for Monday Night Football. Bears at Rams. Rams are 6-point favorites. I don't know how the Bears are 5-1. If you look at their offense and the stats, you're like, what? It's all defense. That seems to me, I don't know if the Bears are going to win. I'd probably take the Rams to squeak it out, but that's going to be a dirty ground and pound type of game. I'll say Bears to cover, Rams to win. And the over-under at 45, I think I'll go under as well.
Yeah, I do like the under as well. I agree with you with those two picks. I like the Bears to cover +6 for Chicago as well. Some other ones I wrote down here. I'm just looking at my notes. Carolina +6.5 versus New Orleans. I think kind of the same boat as the Bears, Andy. I like Carolina to cover, maybe lose, possibly win outright. It's possible, but I like them to cover that 6.5 point spread. And that line has moved, actually. I think it was a 7.5 earlier in the week. And then as the news about Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders came out as well, it kind of moved to 7, and now it's at 6.5. So if you got that line earlier in the week, I like that as well.
Wow.
KC, I like KC at -7 versus Denver. I like them to win maybe by 10 or so, because I really do think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think KC with the weather and so on. Yeah. And I like as well Tampa Bay -4 against Las Vegas. Again, Buccaneers. The Raiders defense is just so much worse than the Buccaneers, and we just saw a Buccaneers defense dismantle a much better Packers team by 28 points, I think was the margin last week. So it was brutal. So I think I like, those are my picks for the spreads this week. Survivor pool, I got a couple of Survivor picks as well. I like Chargers over the Jags. Justin Herbert, of course, you picked Justin Herbert. They're playing at home as well. I know home field advantage doesn't exactly mean as much as it used to because of COVID and so on. But Chargers over Jags, and of course Bills over Jets. It's hard not to pick against the Jets, especially in like you said, a get right game for the Buffalo Bills. And do we have time for a couple more prop bets? I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I want to touch on the Bills one first. That
do it.
Whenever you get into double-digit favorites, that always makes me a bit nervous, Show, but not when it's against the Jets. So I think you take, even though it's 10, I think you take the Bills with confidence. Jets, there's just they can't score. Yeah. You can't score. I think you go with the Bills. But yeah, what are your player props?
So my player props, I mentioned the DK Metcalf one already. That was over 68.5 receiving yards for DK. That's at -118. So that's the last time I checked, at least. DeAndre Hopkins, I like them playing against probably the worst pass defense in the NFL. No Jamal Adams as well, I believe, for the Seahawks tonight. So DeAndre Hopkins over 75.5 receiving yards, even on a bit of a worrisome ankle. I think that's fair, but over 75.5. That's -115. And I really like as well, there are a couple of bets left here. Andy Dalton, I think this might be a heavy dose of Ezekiel Elliott today against the Washington football team. So I like Andy Dalton under 22.5 completions, not attempts, but completions. Under 22.5 for Andy Dalton. Yeah. And my last one, Andy, last week I picked as my last pick. I picked against your Browns. I'm going to pick slightly kind of against them again this week. I'm going to say the Bengals score more than 22.5 total team points. So I think they probably still lose, but I think it's a higher scoring game.
Oh, I think you're right. I would take that Bengals score for sure. It was 35-30 last time they played. Bengals defense stinks. They're going to be and they're going to be throwing the ball. You're going to be scoring stuff
Exactly.
by accident.
Yeah.
And the Browns defense certainly has holes, even with Ronnie Harrison back at safety. So yeah, you look at that. That Andy Dalton line is great too. I'm with you. I could see the 22 completions. Like, he might throw it a bunch. I don't know if he's going to connect.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know how that's going to work. But the thing is, too, the Washington offense isn't going to lend itself to force you into some wild scoring spree.
Right.
Right? It's just going to be defense, and they're going to try to run out the clock. So I like that one as well. We're at time already. Fastest hour in all of sports, folks. Wow. That was great. Show, good stuff, buddy. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, for your questions. Like I said, on Twitter, at AndyMC81, at SNSLE, if you got any more questions. And tune in every Sunday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Sportsnet radio network for the fantasy show. That's what Show and I host as well. So good stuff, man. Enjoy the games.
Yeah, and if we didn't get to any of your questions as well, if you so choose to not use Twitter, you can always text us at 590-590. You and I are about to connect again in about 15 minutes to answer some questions on the People's Text line.
Absolutely. So for producer Drew, for Show, I'm Andy. You've been watching Fantasy Football Live on Sportsnet.